From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and Chief Digital Strategist at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I have Mr. Tim Nash with me with his monthly security segment, and we're going to talk about predictions for 2025. You really want to hear this show to better protect yourself online? Grab a drink, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Hey everybody, Stunning Digital Marketing is your digital concierge. We help you put the pieces together to make your marketing success. Specialties we have including WordPress design and development, WordPress security, which is one of our most popular offerings, ads, and more. So if you want to succeed in the digital world, go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and have a look at what we offer, and we'd be glad to help you. And let's jump on a call and make it happening. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And today I got my good friend, Mr. Tim Nash with me, and we're going to talk all about security. How are you, Tim?
I'm doing all right. How are you today?
I'm doing good. It's funny. We were saying before we went to record, I'm looking out your window and your weather is better than my weather. And I think you sent me ugly UK weather because it's that bad out there.
I mean, it is going to tip it down with rain during this call, and you're going to go, oh, the clouds are forming. But at the moment, it looks quite nice out there.
Yeah, I'll take that though. It's what is it today? It's about 6 degrees Celsius, but it's foggy, it's rainy, sounds like the UK.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. That's
Yeah,
home.
I know. So today we thought we'd do a little bit of a prediction show. So of what we see coming next year, which is interesting. And I'm going to jump in and start with my favorite two letters, AI. Right now, I should tell you, I've been playing around with Gemini and Notebook and LM again and some other tools, so that's okay. But as we know, AI is making your job and my job a little more difficult. So let's start with that. Where's AI and how much grief is it going to cause you and I next year?
So AI is a bit of a weird one. I think a lot of people think that it is somehow taking the security area by storm, that we've got like these advanced computers that are attacking things. And the reality is that everyday hacks that occur on the web are being done in the same way as they've always been done. What we are seeing is perhaps where AI is in places like phishing, it's popping up more often, but also in getting to that proof of concept quickly.
Yeah.
Where AI is really taken strides in development areas, just when your average coder now can hook on to something like Cursor and they can quickly develop code at 10 times the speed they used to be able to. Good news. So can bad actors. And a bad actor can give a bunch of code and say, find me the vulnerabilities in that. It makes it very easy for them to do. So we're seeing that whole the time between a vulnerability becoming published and it being exploited has been reducing over the years. But I think in the last few months we've seen that accelerate, and I suspect that's a lot of that's down to AI. And the ability for people to just now be able to throw these tasks instead of to their minions, to their AI overlords, which is fine. But the bigger area where I think we're going to see more happening with AI that's going to be more obvious with security is phishing and the various scams that we're going to see, security scams, because it is scary how easy it is now to have a artificial voice, be it one that sounds like somebody or that is just a generic voice that can just be generated now, and you can just type words in and it will speak them. We've had these demos for years, but now they're believable and they're in production and they can be used.
Well, point and check notebook.lm, Google's product. All you got to do is take a audio podcast, say, for example, this one, say, generate me a summary, because I did it last night, and say, by the way, generate me a voice copy of that summary, push a button, and I'm done. There you go. I mean, and what did that take me? 2 minutes to upload it, 2 minutes to gen the summary, 1 minute to do, and I got a voice, and here we go. And we're off to the races. But the other problem is with phishing scams. We used to identify phishing scams by the language and the bad English. I got to tell you, it's disappeared. I was saying before we went to record, I've had two real good ones hit my box this week. One was a Bank of Montreal scam. For those who don't know, BMO is one of the top 5 banks in Canada. And this one wanted people to click here to get notifications, but you got to start to look at reply to addresses and there's giveaways. And the other, which you've seen and I've seen, it's a PayPal scam saying you owe $3,000 or some exorbitant fund. And the language in it is actually pretty good. So the scammers are using the AI and getting a little smarter.
Yeah, and we're going to see more of those starts, particularly with spear phishing.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we don't see so spear phishing for people who might go, oh, what's the difference between phishing and spear phishing? Spear phishing is targeted. Phishing is, I'm going to send you a PayPal scam which says, hey, you owe $3,000, but it's going to have very little information that is directly to you. A spear phishing attack might be to your actual PayPal address that they've verified with your name and details attached to it,
Mhm.
and then that comes to you. And it's a lot harder to spot a spear phishing attack because it's got a lot more trust markers because they've done the research and it is a targeted attack. Now, we've got so much data, and the one thing that AI is really good at on the whole, lots of asterisks here, is if you give it a bunch of data and then ask it to extrapolate information, you get stuff out. While there are plenty of really bad examples, Twitter's Grok can't draw a
Yeah.
person for love or money, and people ask OpenAI, "Hey, what do you know about me?" and it comes up with funny things. If you ask the right sort of questions, you can get quite a lot of information about a person.
Yeah. No
And
question.
if you've got a data set you can pass to the AI, that can become very targeted very quickly. So you can quickly create profiles which can be used in spear phishing campaigns. The big saving grace we have at the moment is that AI is expensive. And AI, by that I mean that to generate something using AI is computationally expensive. It's also often behind big services. So I imagine that OpenAI and Anthropic, the people behind Claude, and similar are currently struggling with lots of attacks against their endpoints,
Yeah.
lots of API credentials being compromised. Because at the moment, running your local LLMs is hard to do, requires more CPU usage than most CPUs have, requires GPU usage. However, what I haven't seen yet in the wild too much, but I expect for next year is how when WordPress sites in particular get compromised.
Yes.
Now, they're often compromised, and people will throw a Bitcoin miner on there for
Mhm.
the CPU. So they use the CPU to mine Monero or Bitcoin or one of these other
Or do
coins.
whatever they're doing. Yep. Yep.
I think, and one of my predictions for next year is that we're going to start seeing a lot of that being replaced with LLM based jobs.
Yes. I agree.
So they're going to so you already see distributed LLM systems, so distributed AIs effectively, and that you basically they'll hack your site to use your CPU
Mhm.
so that they can use this for their own computational stuff to do other things.
No, I
Uh,
would agree. I would agree with that. And that's why small business owners, not always big businesses, are more the targets for these because they tend not to keep their websites up to date. I don't know about you, Tim, but usually when I get a call from a small business owner who's not on a website security care plan, they're already over their head and in trouble because they've been hacked. And they're like, why would they hack me? Well, because we all know small business owners don't do a good job unless they hire somebody like yourself or me or somebody else to do it for them to keep their websites up to date. So they're a prime target for those kind of attacks.
I always say to customers who get hacked when they ask me why did they hack me, and the answer is they didn't. They don't know you. They don't care about you. They don't
Mhm.
know anything about your site. They didn't hack you. They hacked the
The
server
site.
via
Yeah.
you, and
Yeah.
they're after the resources in the server or they're after your customers. It's really rare to see a targeted hack. They happen, but they tend to be happening against, as you say, bigger businesses. And if a
Or the
small business is being hacked, that's
yeah.
either because specifically and they've been targeted, then they're being targeted because of something that is very specific to that needs, whether that's personal or
yeah,
agency.
for example, law enforcement, for years, I managed, I don't anymore because I passed it on, a website for the Ontario Police Memorial. And what the Ontario Police Memorial is it's an area that memorial for fallen police officers who die in the line of duty. Very important. And every year, the first day in April, um, the first Sunday in April or May, it's a ceremony. And one year I sat in the communications truck with my iPad and watched the hack attempts on the server go up as the ceremony was going on. So that's a targeted attack because you can almost guarantee those are haters. I have clients in the political space. I can tell you those are targeted attacks.
Yeah. So, anything that has got a political bent possibly goes through. And it's often some surprising places. I have a client who's, I'm going to have to make up what industry they're in because otherwise we identify them. But they basically run a magazine, and that might sound really, for where they are and who they are, as far as they're concerned, their magazine is a perfectly normal thing. But
Yeah.
in certain countries, just possession of their print magazine would be enough to have you literally stoned to death.
Yeah.
So they get targeted in surprising ways, and they are directly targeted. But they are in these cases we're talking about. These are the extreme ends, and the vast majority of
Yeah.
people are not targeted. Their resources were being targeted, and the bad actor doesn't care, doesn't know, doesn't, and that's it. They do not care about the site, which makes for some people that is a thing that they can sort of hold on to and feel like, oh, I haven't, because often when a site owner gets a site gets hacked, the site owner thinks, oh, why me? Why is this? And it can feel like personal violation. It can feel similar to the experience you get if your house gets robbed or something gets stolen from you. It
Mhm.
has that sort of emotional connection. And so
Yeah.
for some people, the idea that actually I wasn't targeted gives them a little bit of, oh, sense of, okay, it wasn't about me, it wasn't about our business, it was just a thing that happened, and they can rationalize it. Whereas others find that even more upsetting, that it was like, oh, I just got caught up on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's jump into the WordPress space because you mentioned that word. Lately, we've been seeing, I don't know, a large number of plugins and themes that are being abandoned in the repository. Now, I don't know if that's because of the drama going on, which I really don't want to get into, or if that's just because it's going full cycle. And that's a concern because, again, small business owners aren't keeping up to date with this stuff and they need somebody in their corner to help them. What do you see going on there with all the increase in abandonments?
So it's weird because literally half an hour ago, I was talking about pretty much exactly the same thing. And I was
Okay.
saying that one of the problems that we have with our current setup with updates coming from WordPress.org is that if you go onto the WordPress.org website and someone has given up doing something on the plugin and they've told the WordPress.org, no, I'm not updating it anymore, there's a banner that comes up saying this plugin has been archived.
Yep.
It's taken a long time to get there to have that banner, but that banner's there. You also can see if the plugin hasn't been updated for a period of time, X number of releases, there's a similar sort of banner there. But if you're on your WordPress site looking at your plugins to do your review of what you're looking at, that information's not passed over at all. So you have no easy way of knowing which one of these plugins is being supported or not without going and checking each one individually.
Mhm.
And yeah, as we are losing people, there is I think it's fair to say that, you know, the people who do things with WordPress, the general people who started with WordPress and have been doing this for the last 15, 20 years, they are now 15, 20 years older. We do actually have people, we are losing developers, as in
Mhm.
they are literally dying out. And I don't think we're replacing them as quickly as we're losing them. And
Yeah.
the people leaving the WordPress ecosphere, not through death, but just through natural, I don't want to be here, I've got another job, I found a cool thing that I want to do. Because that's it. A lot of these people started because WordPress was a cool thing and they wanted to do a cool thing. And now
Yeah.
they've on to their next cool thing. But we're not getting enough new people in. So therefore the whole area is stagnating.
No,
How that
I would agree. Actually.
how we fix that is, I think we've got two problems. We've got a bunch of things that are stagnating, and we have no way of showing that. A really good fix would be a better explanation as to what plugins are being updated and when things have been archived. Now that could be done by simply, as where we do the WordPress update checks, which happen every 12 hours on your site, it could just ping back in the API, this one needs to be, this has been no longer updated. And you could have that displayed on the plugins page. The plugin installer page is probably the oldest page to not have some sort of update.
That's correct.
That page, I think, has stayed maybe the general settings page, but I think other than the general settings page, the plugin page is probably the one page that has stayed constant
Mhm.
for a decade plus. So we could do with that getting updated. Now, it would be nice if after all of this stuff that's happening in the WordPress community that we're not talking about, that something comes out of this where we do have a better distribution mechanisms and the option to have multiples, because that will help. If we can have a mechanism where I can, let's say, I decide I really fancy the hellish job of becoming a plugin repository owner.
Yeah.
Don't fancy doing this, but let's say I do, and I open Tim's repos and you can subscribe to Tim's repos, and then I can dictate which ones plugins are archived and out of date. And if I have that, if you have the mechanism to subscribe to my repo, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that will help. That because then we're allowing people to take more control and more ownership. Because at the moment we don't have any control and ownership of the distribution system, and we can't even see when these things are going wrong. So that was a very waffly answer to there isn't an answer yet, but there are routes to get there.
No, no, I agree with you, Tim. And we can not talk about that stuff, but that's, not kind of where I was going. I don't want to talk about the drama, but I agree. Multiple distribution points would be, I think you and I have talked about before, is a really good idea, actually. One point of failure, it's not necessarily a good answer to a lot of things, personally.
I mean, if nothing is really simple, as at the moment, we are a worldwide community with various laws depending on which country you're in. And
Mhm.
those laws vary quite dramatically around security, privacy, software expectations. You know, here in the UK, we are probably a bit more information security focused, especially around data protection, but also with things like our new resilience laws that are coming in that are mimicking the EU cyber resilience laws, which are already in place, which have certain requirements. At the moment, as a plugin owner, you can't actually meet the requirements for the European laws if you use WordPress.org as your distribution point.
Yeah.
Now, that's fine because if WordPress.org doesn't want to meet those requirements, they shouldn't necessarily have to because if they are deemed a US entity or wherever they want to be as an entity and they don't need to meet certain things, they don't have to. But only if we have the mechanism to be able to say, all right, you do your thing, we'll do our thing, and they'll do their thing. That's fine if we can have that. But where we're in a scenario where we can't, we have a centralized distribution system, it has to support all the users if it wants to be a worldwide thing.
Yeah.
And that's a big strain. And I think it's showing now that it's buckling a little bit under that strain.
Yeah, I agree with you just a little bit, and it's grown so much that it's been an issue. Um, where else do we see going? We've had the discussion in the last year around 2FA, around passkeys, around using a security key. Where do you see that? Do you use a password manager? Do you not? Where do you see that whole mess going next year? Because there's different people in different camps. I'm in the camp where I use either a security key or a password manager, but I also put a string of characters at the end of every password that's not in my password manager or my security key on purpose. Where do you go with that?
I mean, I think for the vast majority of users, the threat model that they are facing means that using a password manager will get them over 90% of the way in some sort of two-factor authentication. And that can be, whenever we talk about two-factor authentication, and people will immediately, well, sending an email with a key is insecure. It's like, yeah, but it's better than
And
not. If
nothing.
that's if
Yeah.
that if that's the basis we're starting at, sending it via text message is not secure. If someone's spoofing my text messages, yeah. But my threat model doesn't have someone spoofing my text messages very often, and that's a very and my I hope my telecoms provider is better than that. Obviously, I'd much rather they all had, you know,
Yeah.
proper hardware tokens. But I also realized that at $50 a pop, not everybody is going to be able to afford two, because you can't just have one. You need to have the spare.
I have
Because
three.
if you only got
I have
one and it gets
three.
run
I have
over,
three. Yeah.
yeah. Having literally ran over my two-factor hardware token with a car, I can tell you you need more than one. Uh,
Yeah.
and not have both of them on you at the same time, which is another example of where it goes wrong. But so it really that becomes quite expensive quite quickly. So
It
I
does.
would
And
much
then
rather,
you got to worry about updating them and keeping them in sync too, which is another issue
but I'd
altogether.
much rather people use things that provide that are
Yeah.
that they can just use easily. Um, in fact, I'm almost I think I'm now moved into the camp where I actually would prefer you to use a hardware token
Okay.
or use your email over a standalone two-factor authentication app.
Okay.
Now,
So
there is some caveats to that. If the standalone two-factor authentication app can be distributed to more than one
Mhm.
device, but so many people got trapped in Google Authenticator world where they had a Google Authenticator app on their phone
Mhm.
and then their phone died and then they had no mechanism to get their two-factor authentication keys.
But hang on. Do you know you can take Google Authenticator and make a backup and import it into another device? And
You
there you
can now,
Yep.
but only new codes that were in there.
Yep.
So the old ones, you're stuck.
So here's the problem. And let me share this very publicly. And we haven't talked about this.
Don't mind me, I'm just bleeding in on the call.
That's okay. We'll just kill you later. That's all
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
What happened was 2 months. Oh, we did talk about this. We did talk about my Google chargebacks and my issue.
Hmm.
By the way, I did get my money back and I did not get my
Yay.
Google account suspended. So
Ah,
that was it took from the time I talked to you about this last month to the time it happened 4 business days because the bank had emails saying we screwed up and not our problem. But here's the problem. If they can do that to my Google Wallet, what's to say my authenticator's not going to get compromised either? And that's where
So
I went.
if you're going to export, if you're going to have the Google Authenticator and you do want to distribute it, well, now it's behind a Google account.
Yeah.
Whereas one of the advantages of the Google Authenticator initially
Yep.
And in case anybody's not familiar with what this is an app that was installed on your phone that basically gave you one-time passwords that repeated every 60 seconds, or in later versions gave you proper top passwords. But initially, it just let you scan the QR code, it would add them. There wasn't any back end to this at all.
Yeah.
More recently, and you can tell that me and Rob work in sort of periods of time that we don't think of because we're like more recently, that's probably in the last couple of years,
It
not in
is.
the last couple of decades. But more recently, you have been able to distribute it to other phones and other devices and store it in their cloud
Mhm.
in a hopefully secure way.
Yeah, I know. And then when you look what I went through with Google Wallet, you say, really? So if it happened there, what's to say it doesn't happen here? And that's my whole
Yeah,
premise.
if Google blocks your account, your two-factor authentication codes are blocked.
Yes.
It's very difficult to block hardware tokens.
Mhm.
Not impossible, depending on the tokens, but it is very difficult for hardware tokens to be blocked. It's quite difficult for email to be blocked. Obviously, your email accounts themselves might be compromised and blocked, or the your provider may block your email, but you can go and set up a new email account and
Yeah.
new DNS records. So as long as you have control of the domain, email is a pretty valid route. As long as you control the phone number, it's the
Mm.
phone is a potentially valid route. Less control over than a domain name, though. Domain
Yep.
names are something that you genuinely you control, and there's very few times that can be taken away from you, as long as you're using reputable providers and you're not being a complete ass. So yeah, it's really weird how I've gone from being this person that's like, no, don't do this, to actually I'm okay with you using email for two factor if that's what you've got. I'd rather you use this, but if you haven't got this, I'd just make at least it's a step. And
Yeah.
that's all we're doing. We're putting barriers in, and we're just putting extra barriers for
Extra
bad
barriers.
actors. But every barrier we put in, if we put in too much friction, the user won't do it.
Yeah,
It's like
that's the
saying, "Oh, I'll have a password manager, but I add extra characters." It's like, yeah, but we're not going to ask other people to do that because that's too much friction, and that
yeah.
would be too much for them. But if we can just get them to put the password in a password manager, or even better, the password managers who've generated the password, excellent next step. We've actually now got unique passwords. We're getting there. We're slowly building them up, and it is helping. Things like Apple implementing their own password manager. A
Mhm.
lot of hate came out about it because why is a OS managing this?
Yeah.
Um, but at least it puts a password manager in front of people, and that's got to be a good thing. Um, Not the password manager I would use, nor would I use the built-in password manager in my browser.
I wouldn't do that. No.
But if a client comes to me and says that's what they use, I'm gonna go, cool, because you're using a password manager, and that to me is the threshold that I care about.
No, I agree with you. It's funny. And the other thing we got to stop getting people to do, and then we'll kind of move on, is stop using free Wi-Fi to do financial transactions. I was in a Starbucks the other day, and there was a guy talking to his friend, and the guy was an executive. And he's like, "Oh, I have no concern about doing financial transactions on free Wi-Fi." So I walked up to him and handed him his Visa card and his Aeroplan number on a piece of paper and said, "I would rethink that, and here you go. Have a nice day."
I mean, that says something about the netting of the Wi-Fi. But
Yes, it does.
I mean, obviously, whatever network you're passing over, you have to either trust or don't trust. If you're using free Wi-Fi and you're not VPNing back home, then you are doing what you're doing.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, yes, yes.
I personally find that I don't know whether it's that my devices have become more finicky, whether Wi-Fi's got more rubbish, whether captive portals have become more aggressive, or what it is. But I found that free Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi in general that isn't belonging to like myself and a few other people is incredibly difficult to get onto these days.
So
And
do
so
I.
I tend to just use my SIM cells, just hotspotting off my phone
Mhm.
because that is actually easier. It's much like when I go into a hotel. If I am
Yeah.
going to use the hotel's Wi-Fi, I'm doing it through a travel router because it turns out that's a hell of a lot easier than it is to try and use the hotel's own interface.
Oh no, no question. Exactly what I do. So what other predictions do you have for next year? Anything big, small, medium?
I guess I'm going to put a negative prediction. I mean, not that these have all been positive, but I guess a negative spin, which is I think we are going to see more of the tit for tat security vulnerability and weaponizing of security vulnerabilities. We've seen this to a certain extent already within the WordPress space. We've seen it outside of the WordPress space as well, where a company will go, we found a vulnerability in their plugin. Haha, ours is better. Oh, we found a vulnerability in their plugin. Haha, ours is better. Um, there was a very disappointing scenario which I saw one vendor who published this vulnerability, and they published this big long blog post saying, "We want to talk about this vulnerability because we think it's interesting." And you looked at the vulnerability and went, "There's nothing interesting about this. This is really minor. This is even more minor than some of the things that got ACF taken over.
Hmm.
Why have they published it?" And then you look and go, "Oh, because they just took funding from that
Yeah.
company over there." That's disappointing. But this is seemingly happening more, and this weaponization of security is a thing that's happening more and more. And I don't know whether this is political, whether it's down to people feeling happy to use security this way, or whether it's simply that we've now convinced people that take security seriously. And so now people think that they can abuse this privilege that we have, where we say something is a security vulnerability, people go, "Oh, I must update, I must do this, I must pay attention."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the weaponization of security is something that's going to continue, and I think get worse because it's incredibly effective.
Hmm. Or is
And multiple is
some
incredibly effective.
or is some of this being done just to generate income for the security firm? Like we all know back in the day, McAfee, and the founder of McAfee passed away last year, or the year before, was originally a company that created viruses, right? We all know that. So you have to question, and I'm kind of, I'm a patch stack user here. I admit that. And I don't think Oliver Sid and his team are in it to generate revenue, but it's a fine line because they have to report all this stuff to do to generate revenue. So, like, where do we draw that line?
It's very difficult because it is very hard for security vendors to how better to demonstrate your security vendor credentials than by publishing these things. But they are by publishing these things, they are indeed promoting themselves. They
Yeah.
are promoting their services. They're promoting, and it's a really hard balancing act within plugins themselves. When you get there and it's like, "We blocked 60,000 attacks. Upgrade now for us to block more."
Mm.
But you just blocked the 60,000 attacks. Why would I need to upgrade?
You know what
These
that
sort of
sounds?
comments,
That
threat
sound.
and scare tactics are annoying.
You know who's notorious at that is the virus checker manufacturers. It sounds like Norton. Oh, we found all these cookies on your PC, and there are such thing as good cookies, folks. But we found them all. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But pay us for us to find more of them.
Yeah. Yeah, you see the revenue matter. Is there anything else that you think we should touch on, or do you think we're pretty well covered
I think
the
they,
bases?
they, they were my big ones. I am sure we are going to find the world is in turmoil, things will change,
Mm.
uh, odd things happen, but those were the big ones for me for the new
Yeah,
year.
I would agree with you. Canada's about to be in turmoil. We're just coming out of a postal strike. 31 days, by the way, just for fun. The
Well,
the
it's
the
good they're
way.
doing that just in time for Christmas, and I'm sure there's not going to be any backlog whatsoever.
Oh, there's at least a month of backlog, and we're not even taking international shipments for another week. So there you go. That has happened. They have been ordered back by the labor board, so that has happened. And we have a federal election coming up probably in the spring. It's just our system is based on your system, which means if you have a minority government, the House can fall any day now. And we're in that position where we've had the longest running minority government we've ever had, and it's a walking time bomb. So that turmoil. And then you just have to go south of me and look at the turmoil going on in the US right now. And then you look at the mess in Syria that has come up the last couple of days, and everything else going on. It's just joyous fun.
So we want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a
Yes,
cheerful.
and a very happy New Year. And thank you so much, Tim. Go check out Tim's work phone on LinkedIn because he posts quite regularly, and read his posts because they actually make sense. So yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And thank you, and all the best to you and your family, Tim. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you very much for listening to the STM Show. The STM Show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital concierge. For all your digital marketing needs, especially WordPress security, jump on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and let's help you put the pieces together and make your business succeed in the marketing realm. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Very special thank you to Tim Nash for joining me on this edition of the STM Show. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I love you. I miss you very much. And thanks for all the inspiration over the years and your caring, your understanding, and helping me grow as an individual. Thank you, Dad.